Hello everyone, it's me, and today I'll be discussing about different types of documentaries. So, what is a documentary? So, it's a broad term describing a film that captures factual content or reality. So, they are used to reveal an interesting and unusual take or of a story that actually happened, like in reality. Like basically it happens in real time, or it could happen many years ago during history, or maybe it could be based on an event. And they look at this by exploring an unknown angle to that story, or by getting two sides of the argument, or they could be trying to portray it in a more artistic fashion or reconstruct it also. So topics are limited to a number of ideas, and documentary filmmakers use their films to present their stories which haven't been portrayed or debated about to mainstream media. So in order for you in general to make a documentary is to come up with an idea that's never been done before or never been talked about that very often. And it's always good to talk about things that never been heard about or never been portrayed on the screen. And that's what filmmakers and documentary film directors and producers try to do, so we can see that perspective and we get to hear that story ourselves as an audience instead of hearing a story that's already been done like many times, like, you know, the Tudor monarchy. Like there's lots of documentaries about the Tudors and the monarchy and that. And that I'm giving just an example in general, what I mean by that, what they mean by that. So documentary modes, but I decided to go with types because there are types of documentaries. There are like different modes. There's two types. I think I'm going with the 1991 Bill Nichols, the Bill Nichols one, in which he decided to discuss. In 1991, he discusses there are six modes of documentary filmmaking. But I'm saying types because they're categorized. That's why I'm saying the word types, not modes like he pushed. I know there's another theory model around documentaries, but I'm gonna go with the Bill Nichols one because that's the one filmmakers or film students seem to know about more or hear about. So there's poetic, expository, participatory, observational, reflective, and performance. So poetic documentaries focus on experiences, images by showing the audience through different eyes, basically. So they portrayed, so the documentary's been done through images and showing it in a more rhythmical or very experimental way, like because most of the poetic documentaries are mainly abstract rather than factual. But they are factual, but they're very abstract and very experimental and very like art house styled, like art house style basically. So the goal for that is to create the feeling rather than investigate the truth. So there are examples including Rain, Sunless, and Coalface, which are all poetic documentaries. I do want you to be mindful that these terms will be used interchangeably. So, expository is documentaries are used for viewpoint purposes by exploring arguments about a subject. So, it often features a voice of God style voiceover. So, or like a voice of God's known as, you could say, it's social commentary basically, like a narrator talking or telling a side of a story or side of an issue or a debate. So the cinematographer is responsible for collecting images by, to support the argument being made, including archival footage, B-roll, reenactments of historical events. So that's how they're going to show or prove that they are right in that argument. That argument is what they're arguing about. That's the proof that they're going to use, the evidence, you can say. So the examples of this include Eileen Warnos, A Selling of a Serial Killer, Night Mail, and Waiting for Fidel. These are just examples that I'm giving you. Participatory is defined by the interaction between the filmmaker and their subject. So you could say that interviews are an example of participatory documentaries. So the filmmaker is actually talking to the subject, the interviewee, that's the person they're interviewing, they're talking to them about what they are discussing about and trying to understand the reason behind their motives or something. There was a recent documentary about Martin Bashir being exposed as a fraud, basically, like he's getting paperwork. The interview he did with Diana, he felt he should do the interview, and he had fraudulent documents saying that he wanted to so he can get the interview. That's why he fraud documents, because he wanted to do that interview. That interview meant something. So I think I'm just one example. I'm just saying that's an example of an interview, because interviews are generally participatory documentaries because you can hear the voice of the filmmaker in the film, or they could be seen in the film, or they could be present. It's a bit like those rough and ready, fly on the wall type of documentaries, but I'll get to that in a second. So this means the filmmaker is responsible for capturing the footage as well as the film, as is the director. So it's not only the presenter who's involved, it's actually the film crew as well who's involved in the production. So they often present the filmmaker's viewpoint on what the truth really is and capturing emotional responses and interactions. So examples are Boiling for Columbine, Chronicle of a Summer, and Paris is Burning. Observational is a type of documentary filmmaking that aims to record realistic everyday life without intrusion. So, in terms of observation, they just film the person doing their daily, like, for example, of that could be someone going for a walk with their dog or something. So you're observing their the movements of this person, of doing the daily day in the life is an example of a documentary because I've been seeing lots of day in the life document films from YouTubers on the internet recently, and I've been watching those, and they're examples of observational documentaries, even though they're not really. They're mainly making it for YouTube views, and so this is also known as cinema verite style. I hope I'm saying that right. Direct cinema or fly on the wall filmmaking. So observational documentary is cross between poetic and expository, as I just explained. And it could be participatory as well, depending on how the filmmaker wants to make the film, basically, or how they want to that documentary to be made. So, Life and Day is an example of this. Living with Michael Jackson and the Song of Chalon. Reflex, reflexive documentaries are types of documentary filmmaking that explores the relationship between the filmmaker and the audience. So, like I said, the expository was was the relationship between the person. I mean, participatory was the it's the opposite of participatory, but because participatory is more to do with the person in the camera they're talking to, the filmmaker's actually speaking to, not the audience. But the audience can have an emotional effect on it. But this time, it's more to do with how they interact with the audience, or if the audience can really relate to the topic, the subjects in the documentary, whether it's a person or an issue or an event or a story that happened to this person or something that happened. So this is done by pushing the perceptions and reanalyzing the notions of truth and exposing the documentary filmmaking process instead of trying to invoke intense emotions. So that's what I was. So like I said, because it's more to do with how the audience feels, not they're creating it for the audience basically, not for themselves or not for the person. We're not referring to a single person, we're referring to a group of people here. So that's what this means. So this includes Man with a Movie Camera, Life, My Life, directed by Nicholas Wilding Refn, and No Lies. So the last not least is performance. So these documentaries focus on the filmmaker's involvement with his or her subject, using his or own experience or relationship with the subject as a jumping off point for exploring larger subjective topics such as politics and history. So I would say this is more to do with it's a bit similar to a poetic documentary, but it's more about the larger scale of things. They, those topics are often chosen for a performance documentary. And there's a famous director that does this. Like to see, I mean, like, no, I mean, there is, like, basically, I think you can do like different trials. Let's say if they hear something about a service that wasn't that people have reviewed that was negative, for example, like a restaurant, for example, that had very bad reviews and it gained like notoriety within the area. Maybe that the subject in the film or the presenter in the film wants to go and try and investigate that restaurant themselves by going inside and finding out what this restaurant delivers basically and how much maybe it could be something to do with, and see if the food or service is really that bad as people say. Or there's another example which, let's say, it's a bit like Stacey Dooley type documentaries, and where she finds Mexican drug cartels or something like that, and she finds out what they're doing and how these or counterfeit items, like that could be something to do with performance because the presenter is investigating something and they're finding out, or they can try and they're trying out a service that's practically ripping people off. That could be an example for performance. They could be doing that in the documentary. So they're exploring these big topics. They're doing you need to do intense research about these type of things. That's what they're doing in the film, researching constantly, to see if these services are bad and how bad they really are, or based on experience. It could be based on experience. So, a cinematographer is often asked to capture the filmmaking process and intimate footage, which gives the audience an insight into the personal relationship between the filmmaker and the subject. So, that, like I said, they capture these moments, or these eureka moments, they say, of these things like emotional. So they could try and build an emotional connection with the people that have experienced the use of that service. Or, like I said, of the restaurant example. That's an example of trying out a service that's gained this reputation for a bad reason. And yeah, so these examples include Tongues United, Marlon Riggs, Supersize Me, and Fahrenheit 9/11. So these are the references if you want to search more and click on these and find out a bit more about it. And I'll leave the references in the description. So I would like to say thank you for watching. I hope you like this video and gain some type of understanding. I did explain the best I could for a very known topic. But thank you for watching. I would like to see you in the next video. Bye.